I didn't find out because I was looking for anything. That's the part that still bothers me. I was just trying to send myself a photo from my wife's phone, something stupid, a picture of our dog sleeping in a weird position. Her phone buzzed in my hand while I was in the kitchen. A message popped up. I missed last night already. No name. Just a number. I remember staring at it longer than I should have, like my brain refused to process the words in the order they were written. My first instinct wasn't anger. It was confusion. Then something colder. I wish I could say I confronted her immediately. I didn't. Instead, I locked her phone, placed it back exactly where I found it, and stood there pretending nothing had changed, while everything had. Because the truth is, something had felt off for a while. I just didn't want to name it. And maybe I didn't want to be right. Up until a few months ago, my life was painfully normal. Married for 9 years. No kids, by choice. At least that's what we told people. Stable jobs, shared routines, predictable weekends. We weren't wildly passionate, but we weren't miserable either. Comfortable. That's the word. Looking back, I think comfort was the beginning of the end. Around that time, a new guy joined my department, Daniel. Late 30s, confident, the kind of person who naturally takes up space without trying too hard. We clicked quickly. Same sense of humor, same complaints about work. He was the one who pushed for us to grab drinks after work. Man, you need to get out more, he said once. You're too settled. I laughed it off, but I didn't disagree. He started asking about my wife. Not in a weird way, at least not at first. Just casual questions. How long we'd been together, what she did, what she was like. I remember thinking it was nice. Now I replay those conversations differently. Daniel had this way of making you feel seen. Like whatever you said mattered more than it probably did. He'd listen, nod, lean in slightly. Ask follow-up questions. Not many people do that anymore, so I guess I appreciated it more than I should have. We started hanging out outside of work regularly. Drinks, weekend hikes, even the occasional dinner. That's when he met my wife. She liked him instantly. Finally, someone who can keep up with you, she joked. They got along too well, but at the time, I thought it was a good thing. I mean, what kind of husband gets suspicious because his wife and friend don't hate each other? There were small things. Inside jokes that I wasn't part of. Texting between them about group plans that somehow never included me. But I brushed it off. Because I trusted both of them. And because the alternative, the idea that something inappropriate could be happening right in front of me, felt too ridiculous to even consider. The first real crack showed up quietly. It was a Friday night, and Daniel had invited me out for drinks. Last minute? I told him I couldn't. My wife and I already had plans. He paused, then said, "Oh, I thought she was working late tonight." Something about the way he said it made my stomach tighten. "How would you know that?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He shrugged it off. "She mentioned it the other day. Maybe I mixed it up." I let it go. Or at least I pretended to. But later that night, sitting across from my wife at dinner, I watched her differently. Not accusing, just observing. And for the first time, I noticed how often she checked her phone. How she angled the screen away from me. How she smiled at something that wasn't me. It was subtle. Anyone else might have missed it. But once you see something like that, you can't unsee it. After that, everything started to feel like a clue. Every late night at work. Every unexplained mood swing. Every "I'm just tired" when I tried to initiate anything physical. I hated myself for thinking like that. I told myself I was being paranoid, insecure, unfair. But at the same time, I couldn't stop. Daniel kept being Daniel. Friendly. Supportive. Always there. If anything, he leaned in harder. Relationships go through phases. He told me one night over drinks. Sometimes people drift. It doesn't mean it's over. The irony of that statement makes me sick now. I started opening up to him more about my marriage. The distance I felt. The confusion. He listened. Of course he did. Looking back, I basically handed him a blueprint of my vulnerabilities. And he never once told me to talk to my wife directly. That should have been my first real warning. But instead, I trusted him even more. The message on her phone should have been enough. It wasn't. I needed certainty. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked her phone again the next day. This time, I went deeper. Messages. Deleted chats. Photos. And there it was. A thread saved under a fake name. I didn't even need to open it to know. But I did anyway. Scrolling through those messages felt like watching my life being rewritten without my permission. Inside jokes. Flirting. Plans. Explicit things I won't repeat. And then one message that hit harder than the rest. He trusts me completely. I feel awful sometimes, but I can't stop. I don't remember sitting down, but suddenly I was on the floor. Just staring at the screen. Because it wasn't just the betrayal. It was the fact that she knew. And did it anyway. I wish I could say I immediately knew what to do. I didn't. For 2 days, I walked around like nothing had happened. I went to work. I talked to Daniel. I came home to my wife. And I felt like I was living inside someone else's life. Every word she said sounded fake. Every smile looked rehearsed. And Daniel. God. I kept looking at him, wondering how long it had been going on. Wondering if he was thinking about her while talking to me. Wondering if he pitied me. That might have been the worst part. Not just being betrayed, but being made into a joke I wasn't aware of. I started replaying everything in my head. Every interaction. Every moment they were in the same room. Trying to pinpoint when exactly I became the outsider in my own marriage. The confrontation wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No throwing things. Just quiet devastation. I waited until we were both home. No distractions. I sat her down and said, I know. She froze. Not confusion. Not denial. Recognition. That's when I knew there was no misunderstanding. No, you don't, she said, but her voice was already breaking. I read the messages, I replied. Silence. Then tears. Not immediate apologies. Not explanations. Just tears. I didn't mean for it to happen, she whispered. That sentence. I think I'll hear it for the rest of my life. Because it wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a series of choices. Over and over again. And somehow, she still framed it like something that just happened to her. Like she had no control. I asked the question I was most afraid of. Who is it? She didn't answer right away. Which, in hindsight, was its own answer. Please don't make me say it, she said. That's when I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd. Daniel, I said. Her face collapsed. And that was it. Confirmation. I don't remember standing up, but I was suddenly pacing. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get enough air. Both of you? I asked. Seriously? She tried to explain. Said it started as harmless conversations. That they connected. I cut her off. You connected with my friend. In my house. She didn't deny it. That hurt more than anything. Because somewhere along the way, they stopped even trying to justify it. I confronted Daniel the next day. At work. Probably not the smartest place, but I didn't care. I walked into his office and closed the door. We need to talk. He looked up, calm as ever. For a second, I thought maybe I was wrong. Then I said, I know about you and my wife. And his expression changed. Not shock. Resignation. Like he'd been expecting this. It's not what you think, he started. I laughed in his face. Don't insult me. He sighed, leaned back in his chair. It wasn't planned, he said. We didn't set out to hurt you. There it was again. That same narrative. Like betrayal is something that just accidentally happens to good people. You're my friend, I said. He didn't respond. Because there was nothing he could say that wouldn't make it worse. The next few weeks didn't feel real. Arguments blurred into silence, silence into forced conversations, and those into more arguments again. It was like being stuck in a loop I couldn't exit. She cried constantly, at first loudly, then quietly, then in that controlled way where tears just slide down without sound. I didn't cry at all. That scared me. I've always been emotional. I used to tear up at stupid movies, random memories, even certain songs. But now, nothing. Just this dull, heavy pressure in my chest that never really went away. She kept saying she wanted to fix things. I choose you, she told me one night, sitting across from me at the kitchen table like we were strangers negotiating something. It didn't mean anything compared to us. I remember staring at her and thinking, that's exactly the problem. Because if it meant nothing, then what did that say about how easily she could throw it away? She called it a mistake again. I started to hate that word. A mistake is forgetting your keys. Sending a message to the wrong person. Burning dinner. This wasn't a mistake. This was hundreds of decisions. Messages sent. Meetings arranged. Lies told. Risks taken. Every single one of those required intention. But she clung to that word like it softened the impact. And for a while I let her. Because the alternative, the full weight of what she'd done, felt too heavy to carry all at once. We started therapy about a month after everything came out. At first, I didn't want to go. It felt pointless, like trying to patch something that had already been torn beyond repair. But she insisted. Said we owed it to what we had. So we sat in this quiet office with neutral-colored walls and a therapist who spoke gently, like every word had to pass through a filter before reaching us. She told her side. Slowly, carefully. How it started with conversations. How Daniel made her feel, noticed, again. How she didn't realize when it crossed the line. I sat there listening, hands clasped so tightly my knuckles hurt. She described it like a gradual slide. Like something that happened to her rather than something she actively participated in. I felt trapped, she said once. Like I couldn't stop even when I knew it was wrong. That part stuck with me. Because I kept thinking, you could have stopped. At any moment. The first message. The first secret. The first lie. There were so many exits. And she walked past all of them. The therapist asked me how I felt. I gave logical answers at first. Betrayed. Confused. Angry. But those words felt insufficient. Because what I actually felt was something harder to explain. It was like my entire perception of reality had been quietly altered without my knowledge. Like someone had taken my memories and inserted a second version underneath them. Every happy moment now had a shadow. Every "I love you" felt questionable. And even when she was being completely honest in those sessions, I didn't believe her. Not fully. Maybe not at all. That's when I realized trust doesn't just break. It disintegrates. And once it's gone, everything else starts to collapse with it. Daniel left the company not long after everything came out. There was no announcement, no goodbye email, no closure. One day he was just gone. People speculated, of course. Office gossip filled in the blanks with theories, but no one ever came to me directly. Maybe they suspected. Maybe they didn't. I didn't confirm anything. I didn't deny anything either. I just let it exist in that vague, uncomfortable space. The truth is, his absence didn't bring relief. If anything, it made things worse. Because when he was around, I could direct some of my anger outward. There was a clear, other person to blame. But once he disappeared, all that anger had nowhere to go except back into the house. Back into the relationship. Back into us. It became quieter. And that quiet was unbearable. No distractions. No external focus. Just long evenings where we sat in the same space, both aware of what had happened, either able to fully move past it. Sometimes she tried to act normal. Suggest watching something together. Cooking dinner like we used to. And for brief moments, it almost worked. But then something small would trigger me. A notification on her phone. A certain phrase. A memory. And suddenly I was back in it again. That feeling of being replaced, of being the last one to know. She started reaching for me more. Physically. Emotionally. Like she was trying to close the distance she had created. But every time she touched me, there was a split-second reaction I couldn't control. I'd tense up. Pull away slightly. Not out of anger, but instinct. Like my body had already made a decision my mind was still struggling to accept. That's when it really hit me. Even if we stayed together, I wouldn't be the same version of myself anymore. And I wasn't sure I wanted to become the person this relationship was turning me into. The separation didn't come from one big moment. No final fight. No dramatic ultimatum. It was slower than that. Quieter. More like something that dissolved over time rather than broke all at once. We kept going through the motions for months. Therapy. Conversations. Attempts at reconnecting. But underneath all of it, there was this growing understanding neither of us wanted to say out loud. That we were trying to rebuild something that didn't exist anymore. One evening, we were sitting in the living room. Not talking. Just existing in the same space. And she said very softly, "I don't think you'll ever trust me again." It wasn't a question. It was a realization. I didn't respond right away. Because I knew she was right. And admitting that felt like closing a door permanently. Eventually I said, "I don't know how to." That was the closest thing to honesty I could give. We separated a few weeks later. Logistically, it was simple. Emotionally, it wasn't. She packed her things slowly, over several days. Each box felt like a quiet confirmation that this was really happening. We divided furniture, belongings, shared items that once felt meaningful. Now they were just objects. When she finally left, the apartment felt different. Not empty exactly. Just stripped of something intangible. Like the energy had shifted. I kept expecting some kind of relief. A sense of freedom. But what I felt instead was grief. Deep, persistent grief. Not just for her. But for the life I thought we had. The future we planned. The version of us that existed before all of this. And maybe the hardest part was realizing that version was never coming back. It's been over a year now. Time has softened some things, but not in the way people usually describe. It didn't erase the pain. It just made it less sharp. More distant. Like something I can observe without being completely consumed by it. But it still shows up. In unexpected moments. A random memory. A certain place. Even something as simple as seeing a couple laughing together can trigger this quiet, uncomfortable thought in the back of my mind. What don't they know about each other yet? That's probably the biggest change. The way I see people now. The way I see relationships. I used to believe trust was something solid. Stable. Now it feels fragile. Conditional. Something that exists until it doesn't. I don't hate her. That's the strange part. For a while I thought I would. That anger would be the thing that carried me through. But it faded. And what replaced it wasn't forgiveness exactly. It was more like acceptance mixed with distance. The same goes for him. I don't think about Daniel much anymore. When I do, it's not with rage. Just a kind of detached disbelief. Like remembering something that doesn't quite make sense. What stays with me isn't just what they did. It's how easily they justified it. How something so destructive can develop quietly, without immediate consequences. How people can live double lives while maintaining the appearance of normalcy. If there's anything I've taken from this, it's not some clean, positive lesson. It's more complicated than that. I pay attention now. To small inconsistencies. To gut feelings I used to dismiss. Because ignoring them doesn't protect you. It just delays the moment when everything finally comes into focus. And by then, it's usually too late.